Adbusters propose a return to the earlier corporate incarnation, entities with a limited function which expire at the completion of that function. This would mean a completely different cultural and economic landscape. Corporations and brands would be relegated to a functional position in society where they serve us instead of dominating us. Adbusters, as a means to reach this improved version of the corporation, suggests as a symbol, and to show we're serious, the killing of a corporation. Make them subject to the forces that control humanity. However great and powerful we become, however mean we are, in the end along comes death, all nonchalant in his hoodie with his long-handled dagger, and levels the playing field right out. Much of the irresponsible and destructive behaviour engaged in by corporations is likely because they are never punished. No corporation has ever been killed. It doesn't matter how much they pollute, lie, steal, or even when they murder their customers, the consequences are minor. I agree with Adbusters. It's time to kill a corporation. They suggest a bunch, including General Motors. General Motors, as the name suggests, are generally speaking interested in producing automobiles. Perhaps they're being a bit too general and should be a bit more specific. Perhaps it's this somewhat vague and blasé approach that led to one of the more notorious crimes in their history. Put briefly, they accidentally made an ignition that shut down and killed people, installed it in one of their cars, then sold loads of them. Some people died as a result, and their families, disappointed by the loss of their loved ones, complained. GM, of course, apologised, they're not monsters, but then had a conundrum on their hands. Should they recall all the vehicles that had the faulty murderous ignition, which would be pricey if you value economic cost more highly than the cost of the loss of life to a family? GM do. They have to. They're designed to. They are legally obligated to make as much money as possible. That means in a situation where human life is weighed up against a fiduciary deficit, there will be blood. In a way, the allegorical device of a man-made machine that goes wrong and kills people is too on the nose to be helpful. 12 more people died. GM effectively did nothing. Now let me remind you, this is your planet. You can change it if you want to. You can change it by doing loads of drugs or having it off with loads of women or going on a murderous rampage with a licensed weapon. Doesn't it make more sense, though, to change it by binding together with your fellow man and working to create a society that's fair and just? Of course it does. Let's kill General Motors. Let's take it back from its shareholders, scribble out the name and the logo, and use its resources for something more valuable. In Michael Moore's excellent first film, Roger and Me, Moore explains how GM used to employ loads of people from where he's from, in Flint, Michigan. His dad and loads of his uncles worked there, and it was all cool. People were doing fine. Then, when GM discovered it would be more profitable to move their production to Mexico and fuck off the town and all the loyal workers that toiled away their lives at the plant, they barely paused to say, ay caramba, if you can tolerate a little racism. They had to. They are an entity designed to make profit at all costs. They're a bit like the Terminator in the film. The Terminator. Terminator, as his name suggests, is a robot designed to terminate people. It's no good getting all cross if you leave him to look after your rabbit when you go on holiday and you come home and discover he's terminated it. That's his job. You should have asked a neighbour. So we should say to GM, right, this company of yours, you've had a good innings, but frankly, we're upset about the pollution, the disloyalty, and not to put too fine a point on it, the killings. So we're shutting you down. You don't have a GM anymore. There's no GM anymore. Stop crying. You should have thought of that when you didn't recall those 40 units because you calculated it would be cheaper to compensate the victims and tarnish the brand. We have a couple of options for what to do with the assets that GM have, their factories, plants, or any resources they own. We could sell them off and use the money to compensate victims and former workers, or we could collectivise it and run it as a worker-owned cooperative. The people that run the factories, design the cars, work in the canteens, do the admin, all that, I'm not an expert, who knows what they get up to, will own and run their company. Each region will be autonomous and fully self-supporting, except in matters that affect other areas of the organisation or the planet or humanity as a whole. They can democratically elect a board from the workforce who will serve for a limited time period and are kicked off if they fuck about. They can call their new company whatever they vote for. I'd suggest we don't kill our customers' motors and get on and responsibly make automobiles for American people. I won't worry too much about exporting them, as other countries have their own fucking cars that they can reclaim. Like in Germany, for example, the people could take back Volkswagen in much the same way and call it, we don't make cars for Hitler motors or whatever. These companies might consider observing a new charter which they can collectively devise to make cars responsibly. Might I suggest, for example, not deliberately making cars that break down in a few years so they can sell more of them. Built-in obsolescence, the deliberate and ubiquitous practice of manufacturing shoddy and expiring products, can be outlawed. It doesn't serve us, it only serves them. Other corporations that adbusters suggest bumping off include Philip Morris, the fag company. 1 million people have died of smoking-related diseases, and as I keep saying, because it is such a clear demonstration of the priorities of big business, they knew for ages they were killing their customers but were as addicted to the money as we were to the nicotine. They had no obligation to obey human codes. If I, old Russ, knew that the milkshakes I was selling caused blindness because scientists kept telling me and because the people drinking my shakes were having trouble finding their way back to the store, yet carried on selling them, I'd expect consequences, especially if I aggressively went around getting anyone I could to drink my cataract smoothies through sexy adverts. Then, if when the jig was finally up, because the lie had become too obvious to ignore, I went to countries where the laws protecting people from my myxomatosis brew were more lax, like the Philippines, and started flogging it there, I'd expect at some point people to come together and say, "All right, old Russ, enough of this now. We're going to have to shut down your milkshake business." If I indignantly responded that my milkshake business was a proud national institution and a tradition or a way of life, out would come the butterfly nets and I'd be in for a spell of basket weaving. Today, in Britain, America and other mostly white people countries, fag firms have to write a message on the box to the effect of, "Sorry we lied to you about our snout for generations. Here's a list of ways this stuff is going to make your life worse if you smoke these." So instead they are promoting their cigarettes all over Africa and Asia, new markets where people are less informed on the subject and there are no warnings about cancer and the other known negative side effects of smoking.